Hello, it's Ren Presents time. I'm your host, Ren. And today we continue with the Hazards of the Old Ones, Part 3, Chapter 9, The Celestial Arborium. Last week, we saw the Duke of Olin dock with the Seeker, Captain Davage's ship. He comes aboard. The captain is ready to arrest him as a pirate and a scalawag. However, the Duke returns to Captain Davage, his friend, Lieutenant Kylos, his sister, Lady Poe, Carahil, and, most importantly, his Countess Sigillis, who's injured, dirty, and a little slimy from having been inside Carahil's stomach, but very much alive. And Captain Davage, indebted to the Duke, pays his debt, as a good Vith always does, by dropping the charges against the Duke. He then, in the dispensary, receives a sinister message from King Hezru of the planet Xandarr, and Captain Davage tells the king, "I'm sick of your fat ass. I am coming to arrest you, and if you don't like it, I'm going to kill you." So that's where we're currently at. Captain Davage is on his way to arrest the sovereign ruler of an entire planet. But since they're Zaphans, King Hezru is a Zaphan and he's the League doesn't really care what Captain Davage does on a Zaphan world. They're all considered outlaws in the League. So bringing in the king and his daughter is just par for the course, I suppose. This week, Part 3, Chapter 9, The Celestial Arborium. At long last, Carahil is going to spell out his intentions and what he's been intending this entire time. We're, 268 pages into the book, and it should be plain what Carahil's goals and thoughts are, but in case they're not, they will be spelled out today. So, let's proceed immediately. Part 3, Chapter 9, The Celestial Arborium. The initial shock of seeing Kai, Lady Poe, Carahil, and finally Sig had worn off, and Davage felt like celebrating. They had a day before they reached Xandarr, and he ordered the ship's chef, Lord Ottoman, to prepare a huge pig roast, complete with flowing narva and grog for the whole crew to enjoy in their off-shift time. With all that good food and drink, the mess was filled with song and fellowship, just like in the old days after a huge victorious battles with the Zaphans. Davage sat at a large table with his guests and his sister. Larson and Verlin were on the bridge, Verlin at the navigator's position and Larson in command. Davage made sure to save them some choice cuts from when they came off shift. He had to admit he liked the Duke, Tori Jane, and his men. Tori reminded him a lot of Bethriel of Moan, very pretty, very friendly, and fun-spirited. She was easy to know. Still, he noticed whenever she and Sig locked eyes, her smile faded into a scowl. Sig and Tori did not appear to like each other at all. Probably had issues from their Black Hat days. Sig had told him she had many Black Hat enemies, and clearly Tori Jane of Lamb was one of them. He hoped they could put whatever it was behind them. Sig was too sore and weak to pay Tori Jane any mind. She quietly sat next to Davage in a white gown, leaning against him a little. She didn't set her hair as she normally did when wearing her gowns. It lay long, wavy, and red at her back. Davage helped Sig cut her food. Beneath the table, they held hands when they could. Nearby, Kai was hoisting a mug of Narva and singing war songs with several of her marine friends and with John of Ruthven. Apparently he was a drinking kindred spirit. Tweeter, glowing, wings flapping, fluttered as if in time with the song. Davage couldn't help but notice that little Johnny had eyes for Kai, and oddly, Kai didn't appear to be dismissing him totally. It was very unusual for Kai, who normally was very, very married. Mugs aloft, they leaned into each other in a flirty sort of manner as they sang. He noticed Poe, face swollen, was sitting a few chairs down by herself with her food. She had always eaten alone, going back to the days when she was infirm with her undiagnosed Shadowtech sickness. A spell was always possible. She hadn't wanted to attend the feast at all. He had to make up some sort of important-sounding story that it was fleet tradition that those wounded in battle were expected to attend a celebratory feast, which Poe bought without question. Davage was about to call her over to sit with him when Peter of Ruthven, holding his plate, walked up and asked if he could join her. While standing in line to get his food, Davage had noticed Peter exchange a quick glance with Poe, and now there he was, sitting with her, engaging in pleasant conversation. Real charmers, these Ruthvens appeared to be. Carahil was oddly absent. It was nothing like Poe had ever experienced before. She had wanted to eat alone in her room. Her face was a blackened, puffy mess. Her feet were bandaged and too swollen to wear proper shoes. And most importantly, her gown was stale and stained. It was important for a great house lady to wear a proper gown, befitting and honoring her house. Of course, she could create a gown using silver tech, and she could do it in a quick second, and it would look smashing as well. But that wasn't proper. That wasn't a thing a lady did. A Blanchford gown was supposed to be created by elder hands, using approved fabrics and threads made on Blanchford looms. To simply conjure one up out of thin air? Why, it would be a slap on her house's face. It was ridiculous for her to even consider such a thing. So, she wanted to take her dinner alone in her room, or possibly with Carahil, though he was missing at the moment. Dav and Sig had come in and demanded that she eat with them. They said they were having a celebration for everyone's safe return, and Dav wanted her to come and join them in the mess. They said everyone was asking about her. "I'm not in a proper fashion and my gown is unacceptable," she said. Dav, though, said that nobody expected her to be ballroom ready. They knew she'd been through a terrible ordeal. They understood that she was recovering from wounds dealt to her by a cruel and implacable foe. "I do not wish people to see me like this," she insisted. Dav then told her it was a fleet tradition after a battle to have a feast, and that he added those wounded in battle were given a special place of honor and were expected, if able-bodied, to attend. He said to choose not to attend would be dishonoring hundreds of years of fleet tradition. "Oh, well, in that case," Poe said. So cleaning herself up as best she could, she joined Dav and Sig in the mess. She sat through the meal, trying to blend in. The crew was noisy and festive, and passing by, they wished her well with raised mugs. Lieutenant Kylos was singing some sort of fighting song nearby, and Poe listened, quietly humming along with the tune. After a little longer, she wished to excuse herself and go back to her room. Standing in line with his plate to get a helping of pork was Lord Peter, the nice fellow she had met earlier. He was a touch shorter than she was, Blanchford's being taller than most, and wore a long black coat with a white linen shirt. He had a black pair of pants tucked into Esther-style boots. His hair was sandy and cut short. Esters generally didn't wear their hair long in a tail like Vith, Zenins, and Remnafs did. She remembered his hands, so skilled, so soothing. She hoped he would look her way so that she could acknowledge his kindness with a courtly nod. But no, he was a Ruthven, a bound house minor, and was badly outranked in the scheme of things by the House of Blanchford. Proper etiquette demanded that he not look at her while she was eating. The League, with its societal rules and decorums, could sometimes be a stuffy thing. She planned to write him a letter thanking him for his attention and mentioning that his kindness had meant a great deal to her. She then planned to make it known that the House of Blanchford shan't be offended by a visit. She, using proper channels, would invite him to come to Blanchford, though the correct thing for Lord Peter to do would be to graciously decline the offer. House minors did not mingle with great houses, even if invited. It wasn't proper. She allowed her thoughts to wander, to fantasize. She dreamed of inviting him to come to Blanchford and bowl with her in their private, hidden alley. She dreamed of showing him her prized pink bowling ball, and if he didn't have one of his own, she would have one made specially just for him. Imagine! To enjoy an afternoon of bowling with Peter under the Palatine courtyard, an afternoon of laughing, of listening to the ball rolling down the waxed lane and the clash of the pins falling. Perhaps they could drink lemonade and score their games by hand with pad and pencil. The thought of such an afternoon made her tingle. She tormented her napkin into careless shreds, she wanted it so much. But it wasn't proper. It wasn't proper. Peter looked up and turned to her as he waited to get his food. He stared at her. She remembered her swollen, blackened face. She blushed and felt ashamed. She looked away for a moment. When she looked back up, Peter was still staring at her. He looked at her in an odd way. He looked at her the way she fancied Dav looked at Sig. She felt uplifted by it. No longer was she bruised and blackened in a stale gown. Now she was beautiful. Now she was perfect. He made her feel beautiful. That look, was that what she was missing all this time? With all those great lords looking at her and seeing nothing but the gown and the house behind it, the rank and the status. Could it be that a mere momentary look across a noisy room finally created in her all the things she had wanted to feel but never managed before? Do you see me, Peter? Is that possible? Am I beautiful to you? Peter got his serving and made to sit with his brother Johnny and Lieutenant Kylos, the two of them singing away. He stopped and approached and asked if he could join her. How could this be? This broke any number of rules. What might people say? After a moment of astonishment, she found she didn't care about rules and social constraints anymore. It was just she and Peter. Nobody else mattered. Soon they were lost in conversation, just the two of them. It was wondrous. The next morning, with the final approach to Xandarr only hours away, Davage pulled everybody into the conference room. Now it was time to hear how all of this had come to be. He listened to Kai talk about Carahil and the hazards of the Old Ones, how she didn't recall what she saw or did there, and how the Duke, again at Carahil's planning, was there to pick her up. He listened to his sister talk about her abduction, and he got angry as she told her story, his kind, gentle sister being put through such an ordeal. He watched as his sister and Lord Peter made eyes at each other. He listened to the Duke talk about picking Kai up and then taking a detour at Carahil's insistence to an uncharted planet which turned out to be a Black Hat stronghold. And there they freed Sig and Lady Poe. With the exception of Lady Poe's abduction and Sig's capture, everything appeared to have a central common thread: Carahil. "Well," Davage said, "all we need is Carahil here to explain a few things." The door to the conference room opened and in came Carahil. "Am I late?" he asked. "Where have you been?" Kai asked. "Well, you're right on time, actually," Davage said. "So, Carahil, what is all of this? What is going on?" Carahil hopped up onto a chair and paused, as if for dramatic effect. "Of course, you know I am a Nargle elemental spirit, and soon to be a member of the Celestial Arborium. Yes?" "The what?" Davage asked. "The Celestial Arborium. It's basically a fraternity of insanely powerful, ridiculously good-looking elemental spirits who are charged with maintaining order and balance. I am simply its latest recruits, though I've not fully joined as of yet. They said they'd do anything if I'd only join." "Well, you know you're good-looking, but not that good-looking," Tori said, smiling. Poe chimed in. Carahil, I made you in a fountain." "Yes, you did, Mother. Surprise! You created a Nargle spirit, and the Arborium thanks you for that. Such grace and beauty could not possibly go unnoticed and not be asked to join, if I may. It was a no-brainer." "A no-brainer, huh?" Kai rolled her eyes. "Carahil, you simply cannot get enough of yourself. You know that, yes?" "Well, I know. But, though it pains me to say it, enough about me. Let us cut to the matter at hand. I saw something some time ago. I saw a terrible event that was to happen in the near future. I have taken steps to subvert this event. That is what the Celestial Arborium does. We monitor the universe and strive to maintain order and balance." "Well, what is it? What is this event?" Davage asked. "Why, I saw death. I saw people screaming, people dying. I couldn't allow it to happen. I had to take steps, but I had to do it the proper way. Maintaining balance is an exacting thing, and thus, here we are." "What do you mean you had to take steps? What sort of steps did you take, Carahil?" Kai said, a bit of anger forming in her voice. "A push here, a shove there, an improvised speech or two." Kai's huge brown eyes twitched in growing fury. His book appeared in a flash, and he consulted it for a moment. The book then vanished, and a vase of interesting alien flowers suddenly appeared in front of her. "Flowers, Lieutenant?" he proffered. "Oh!" Tori Jane cried. "Those are neat. Can I see?" Kai, not releasing Carahil from her gaze, picked up the vase and set it down in front of Tori. "Carahil, I'm going to ask you a question, and you better answer carefully, otherwise you might end up with a hole in your head. Did you have anything to do with me quitting the Marines? Did you make me do something I otherwise would never have done?" "Well, you did that yourself, Lieutenant, as we touched upon earlier." "Certainly. However, my proximity didn't hinder matters." "I ought to pop you one. You ruined my life." "I needed you with me. I required your help, and you performed better than I ever could have asked for. I don't see why you're so mad. It all worked out fine in the end." Carahil looked down and twitched his whiskers. "My only regret is that I had to allow my mother to suffer, for I needed her too." "That's why you didn't come?" Poe asked. "Yes, Mother, and I'm sorry. I kept an eye on you, though. I would never let any harm come to you." "Well, I'm happy," Tori Jane said. "You brought me to my Duke." "Well, I'm glad to have helped." Kai was mad. "I don't ever see you doing a whole lot of anything, oh beautiful warrior you, Carahil," she said. "There are cosmic rules, Kai. rules that must be followed. We, as elemental spirits, and myself as a Nargle spirit, follow the rules to the letter. We must set the stage for others to do for themselves, to give a nudge, to provide leadership and inspire. If I were to simply sling it around, that's when the trouble starts. That's when it hits the fan. That's when you fall into the windage of kind and become a demon. And I do not wish to become a demon. Are you barking mad? Kai said, the anger clear in her voice. No, I'm not barking mad, Lieutenant, Carahil shuffled uncomfortably. The prime tenet of the celestial Arborium is balance. Lieutenant, here's what it is. The universe exists in a state of balance. Something happens over here, another offsetting thing happens over there. Give, take, push, pull, everything's in balance. Get it? We can see things that you cannot, and sometimes we lend our aid. Sometimes we see things we don't like and try to take steps to prevent the undesired thing from happening. The problem is balance. If we intercede too much, then balance is upset, and the cosmic scales go haywire. I'm gonna bash you over the head with these scales in a second here, Kai yelled. Speak plainly, or shut up! Look, if I wanted, I could easily tip the scale of balance any way I so chose to. But there's no weight on the scales, and as soon as I let go, the scales will swing wildly in the other direction, and whatever happens then is unknown. Chaos prevails. You are pissing me way off, Kai roared. Carahil continued. Let me dummy this down for you, Kai. What I'm saying is, I can save you from the bus that's about to hit you today, but I can't save you from the piano that's going to fall on you tomorrow. I just can't. What bus? Kai said, smoking mad. The bus and the piano, Kai! I'm trying to make a metaphorical example. For creation's sake, without proper weight on the scales, if I save you from the bus, then that falling piano is going to get you sooner or later. That's balance swinging in the other direction. Then you're dead. And I'm in the windage, becoming a demon for my trouble, sucking the universe's hind wind. Just like Mayax. He really swung the balance. He had his foot on those scales for years. And look what happened. All those poor people who counted on him dead. And not in a very pleasant manner either. You have to turn your back sooner or later. And that's when the universe jumps up and bags you in the rear. You're going to get bagged in the rear all right. Kai looked like she was going to start cussing, but Sig cut her off. Who's Mayax? Sig asked. Mayax, Countess, is a demonic elemental spirit once worshipped by the extinct House of Bottis, Sage of Ruthven said. Mayax deceived the House of Bottis and led them to their extinction 3,000 years ago. He's the guy who's been leaving us the messages, Sig. M for Mayax, Kai added. Sage continued. That is a very common theme in various mythologies. Those who dally too much with elemental spirits end up dying in cataclysmic fashion. The Bottis is one. The Zaffin space station Zal 88 from antiquity is another. They worshipped a feline goddess and were led to their downfall. Mab Sornath was her name, if I recall my reading. Mab Sornath? Davage said. Isn't Mab Sornath a Xandarian deity? They incorporated her into their pantheon of gods after they destroyed Zal 88, Sage said. The reason the House of Zandar sacked Zal 88 was to steal their knowledge. After they put all aboard to the sword and discovered they couldn't understand the knowledge and the wonders that were there, they destroyed everything in spite and turned their benevolent goddess Mab Sornath into a cursed demon of pestilence. Again, the elemental spirit connection tends to be a deadly one. Yes, well, Lord Ruthven, Carahil said. Scribes, it seems, usually like to write about horrible things for shock value and fail to jot down the good stuff that happens. Too mundane, I suppose. Elemental spirits who follow the rules are a positive thing. but are generally unsung in the histories. It's the ones that mess up that you remember. The bodice, Zal 88, who could forget such tragedies? And to clear the record, I think Mayax might have gotten a bit of a bad rap over the years. Did he truly intend to lead the bodice to their death, as the scribes so dramatically say? Or did he simply make a mistake? Did he, in his adoration, upset balance? I think Mayax truly loved the bodice. The fate of the bodice is precisely what I'm trying to avoid here. So then, why is he leaving us all these nasty notes? Kai asked. He isn't Kai, wrong M. Sage continued. I believe I understand what you're saying, Mr. Carahil, and it holds with various ancient doctrines of cosmic equilibrium. So then, to further illustrate your metaphorical point, you, from your lofty cosmic perch, can see that, for instance, Captain Davage is soon to be killed by a passing bus. You wish to save the captain, but cannot do so directly, because cosmic balance has predetermined that he is to die. To proceed anyway will consign him to an even worse fate, your falling piano metaphor, and cause you to become a demon for your efforts, Sage said. Yes! Yes! Carahil clapped his flippers together. You spoke of adding weight to the cosmic scales of balance, and I'm assuming that when the scales are properly weighted, then miracles can happen. Fates can be changed. So then how does one apply the proper weight to the scales of balance and prevent such a calamity? Sage asked. Well, I was waiting for someone to ask me that, Carahil cheered. You put the weight there yourself, Lord Ruthven. You, by your actions, by your decisions, by your courage and your free will, apply weight to the cosmic balance. If I can get you to willingly take steps to save Captain Davage from the passing bus, possibly endangering yourself in the process, then your actions will properly weigh the scales. You will have armed the gods, and best of all, if you put enough weight on the scales, you give me a little wiggle room to do something really spectacular. Thusly armed, I can move the scales of balance about all I want. I can save Captain Davage from the bus. I can slow it down. I can stop it cold. I can make it disappear or turn into spun sugar. And there won't be any falling piano waiting for him tomorrow. Tomorrow will just be another day. He looked around at the faces at the table. Sage seemed to fully understand, but the rest were rather perplexed. Kai, he said, somewhat hurt. Are you mad at me? Yeah? These flowers are cool, Tori said, sticking one into her hair. Where'd you get these? Look, I'm sorry, Carahil, Davage said, interrupting. Kai will get over it. As you said, things appear to have worked themselves out. Now, you obviously have gone to great lengths to bring us together. Obviously, as you put it, there is a bus waiting to run over somebody that you want us to try and prevent, yes? So here we are. Why don't you simply tell us what's going on? What did you see? Who's going to get hit by this cosmic bus you talk about? I really can't say more than I already have. Why? Because, Captain, if I were to do that, you will stop doing and start waiting for me to take action, waiting for me to save the day, and that cannot be. As I just pointed out, I am powerless until so empowered. I need the weight on the scales to act, to receive my arms. I can only be great if you are great first. That is the first rule of balance, to arm the gods by force of deed under free will. Oh yeah, Kai said. Who made up that stupid rule? The universe did. Yeah, right, the universe did it. David shrugged. Look, Carahil, I appreciate what you're saying, and I believe you truly do wish to help or prevent some sort of disaster from happening. Look at the lengths to which you have gone. It would be helpful if you simply told us what and where. Where is this metaphorical bus, and who is it heading for? Well, again, I'd rather you tackle it headlong. Can you give us a hint? Can you do that? Poe asked. A hint? Certainly. Some cryptic, devilishly well-crafted hint to keep us guessing would be allowed, wouldn't it? Carahil's whiskers pricked up. A hint? Well, I don't know. I do have gifts, though. Presents, something for everybody. His book appeared again, and he began nosing through the pages. Let's see. Ah, here they are. 6 boxes of white cardboard shot out of the pages of the book and came to rest in front of each person sitting at the table. Each box had a pastel-colored bow. Sig stood and backed away from hers. Do not open those. He's going to hit you square with a pie. Carahil laughed. I promise, my countess, there are no pies in the boxes. I really do want to give a gift to each of you. Now, before you open them, I need to give you a quick warning. I feel I can do that. The House of Zandar, it's... Foom! There was a flash. Carahil looked to his left, startled. Foom! There was another flash, and he vanished. Everyone seated at the table looked around at Carahil's now empty seat. Poe shook her head and laughed. All right, Carahil, very impressive. Now, where are you? Nothing. His chair remained empty. Just his book and his gifts remained on the table. Sig weakly leaned over. So maybe he's invisible. Davage lit his sight and looked around. Nothing. Carahil's seat was empty. He looked around the room to see if Carahil was hiding somewhere. He didn't see Carahil, but he did see something else. He saw, crawling on the ceiling no less, near Carahil's seat, a strange skeletal figure. It was man-shaped, thin, with overly long arms and legs. Its clothes were stylish, if a little garish. Its face was strange, puckered, withered, painted, and topped with a huge brown wig. Its coattails hung down toward the floor like a pair of icicles. In its free hand, it fiddled with some sort of compact control device. The other hand was held to the ceiling, like a fly. He saw a fading bit of energy surrounding Carahil's chair. Do you see Carahil? Sig asked. No, but I see a rather disturbing ghost. A ghost? Yes, stuck to the ceiling. Just there, Davage pointed up. The ghost appeared shocked that Davage could see it. It put away its control device, jumped down to the floor, and exited the room through the door. Davage sighted as it went. It was standing out in the hallway where it vanished in a flash. Carahil's book lifted off the table by itself and opened. The gifts sitting on the table were quickly pulled into its interior. It closed. The book then vanished. Davage and Kai sat at the conference table. Lieutenants Verlin and Larson were also there. They appeared a bit disappointed with the presence of Kai. Kai, usually a fairly quiet person, chattered without pause about her new appointment to the fleet. I'm all fitted, Dav. It was marvelous. We never got more than simple alterations in the Marines. How long before they're ready? Not until we arrive back at home. They'll be waiting for you at the fleet. Oh, God, by the elders, I'm gonna bust. Verlin and Larson looked at each other and shook their heads. And, Dav, the tailor asked me for what I wanted for my design. I wasn't sure what he was talking about, so I said I'd get back to him. What was he talking about? Davage smiled. Lieutenant Larson, please explain the design to Lieutenant Kylos. The design is a small, unique device, embroiderment, or other small addition to your uniform. It's fleet tradition. It's just a small alteration to your uniform that is personal to you. Nothing overly noticeable or out of sorts, just a small touch, all your own. Kai was ecstatic. Really? Dav, what's yours, if I may ask? Well, mine is an extra buttonhole and button. I added it long ago. I hope that one day it might be filled by... Sig came into the room slowly. She was a little bent over. Filled by what? She said, sitting down next to Davage. Oh, you're talking about the buttonhole, aren't you? Go ahead, Captain. Tell her what the buttonhole was for. Tell her. Davage continued. Filled by Princess Marlith as a symbol of my love for her. If somehow we were ever to be joined, then she would add a button and loop it through. Yes, well, Sig said proudly. That buttonhole got looped through, sure enough, but not by her. Go ahead, Kai, take a look. Kai leaned over the table. The lowest button on his coat was not a real one, it was extra. She had never noticed it before. The button was even different. All the real ones were embossed with the fleet crest. Dav's fake button was engraved with an intertwined D and S. Yep, Sig said happily. I put that button there. Take that, Princess Marlith. I had to use Silvertech, though. I can't sew, even though I'm taking lessons. Dav, I never knew that, Kai said excited. Oh, I know what I want mine to be. Well, enough about that. I wanted to discuss the first officer's position that is currently open here on the Seeker. Verlin and Larson shifted in their seats uncomfortably. I wanted to make it clear to all present that the competition continues. Sig's jaw hit the floor. What? Kylos roared. Kai, these two fine officers have come a long way to compete for your job, which you vacated. They have performed brilliantly, and I'm not going to dismiss them out of turn. They both smiled. Dav, it's me, it's Kai. I'm back. Besides, it was Carahil's fault. Don't blame Carahil, Kai, and obviously you have the inside track. However, these people have impressed me greatly, and I will not look down on them by summarily reinstating you. The competition continues. No, Dav, the competition is over, Kai said, getting her temper and her insubordination up. No, Kai, it is not, Davage said patiently. Dav, Kai said at a shout, ready to give him a good tongue-lashing. Verlin cut her off. Lieutenant, she said in her proper Howe accent, the captain has said the competition continues, and I suggest you prepare to compete to your best, as I intend to compete as best I can. Kai turned to Verlin and spoke in an ugly, condescending way. I suggest, Lieutenant, that you sit there and be quiet, Marine. Davage rolled his eyes. Good creation, Kai. This must be a record. You've been in the fleet for approximately a day, and you're already talking down to the Marines. Verlin reached into her coat and pulled out a folded handkerchief. She rubbed it on her neck and then slid the cloth to Kylos. That, Lieutenant, is called perfume. I entreat you to try it sometime. Kai looked at the handkerchief, her large brown eyes flaring with rage. Sig settled into her seat, thoroughly enjoying this confrontation. She remembered this sort of thing well. Kai could be an intimidating person, and it usually took one or two fist-skinning sessions with her before her nasty bearing changed. To her credit, Verlin showed no signs of backing down. Kai pushed her chair back and made to stand up. Davage intervened. Keep your seat, Kai. In any event, however this plays out, the two who do not get the job will leave here with an armload of glowing recommendations from me. That will, with luck, open any door to any duty or ship you wish to choose to go to. Thank you, sir, Larson said, feeling a bit better. Thank you, sir, Verlin said. However, after experiencing your skill of command firsthand, I have my heart set on this job. Captain, I wish to be your first officer, sir. I wish to serve you and intend to prove my worth. Kai shot Verlin a deadly look. Is that a fact? You, Lieutenant, you're with the 53rd, correct? That is correct, Lieutenant. The 53rd is a science and weather outfit. And what of it? And what of it? Kai said in mocking Verlin's Howe accent. The 53rd is not even a real Marine disposition. The only thing you've ever fought is a cold front and a rain squall. Verlin stood up. Care to find out how much of a Marine I am, Lieutenant? Kai stood. Ladies, sit down, Davage said firmly. They did, still eyeing each other. Kai, that was uncalled for. Lieutenant Verlin has done herself, her house, and her unit proud, and I am honored to have served with her. Again, this competition continues, and if you want this job, Lieutenant Kylos, I suggest you look to it and show these two fine officers the proper respect. Kai stewed. I'm sorry, Dav. It's not me you should be apologizing to, Kai. Kai turned to Verlin. Lieutenant, I'm sorry that you're assigned to a science and weather detachment. Verlin flew out of her seat and tackled Kai. Before another moment had passed, they were locked up into a tight, rolling fight. Kai trying to punch, and Verlin seizing her by the hair. Being such strong, tall women, it took Davage, Inez, and Larson a great difficulty to separate them, Sig being too weak to help. Eventually, Davage had them standing side by side at attention. Kai's hair a tangled, stretched bale of straw. I am heartily disappointed in the pair of you. If you two have an issue with each other, you may work it out in your own time in the gym. Am I understood? Yes, sir, Verlin said. I was attacked, Dav, just now, Kai said. After you all but spat in her face, Kai. You had that coming to you, and you know it. Now, I'm willing to forget this happened here today, but if I have to separate you two again, you both will be spending time in the brig. Understood? Yes, sir, Dav, and you can bet, Lieutenant, you and I will be sorting this out later, Kai said in a nasty, threatening tone. I look forward to it. Now, may we proceed with the briefing? Yes, sir, and I'm sorry, Verlin said again. Kai fumed. Everybody sat down and Davage proceeded. We have set course for the planet Xandarr. Our mission there is to apprehend King Hezru of Xandarr and, if possible, his daughter, Princess Vroc. Of course, it is quite unusual for a League fleet vessel to take into custody the sovereign king of a Zaffin world, but he has admitted to sponsoring, training, and setting loose a terrorist whose only purpose is to fight and kill in League space. We must stop both he and his daughter before any League citizens may be hurt or killed in the process. Davage hit a button, and the map of Xandarr Keep came up in floating 3D display. I anticipate resistance. Here it is. Xandarr Keep is a large, sprawling estate set in a dry valley in the middle of a small village. There, to the west of the keep, is the river Tor, pretty much the main source of water on Xandarr. A direct assault and quelling operation might be difficult given the complexity of the keep and its proximity to a sizable civilian population. I will expect, upon our arrival, thoughts and plans as to our method of attack. Davage turned to Inez. How is my navigator? He'll live, but he's out of commission for the time being. Davage thought a moment. Lieutenant Verlin, will you please continue to man the navigator's position for now? Aye, sir. Thank you, Lieutenant. Now, I needn't remind everybody present that although Xandarr is fairly near the League border, we are nevertheless in enemy territory. We could be attacked by anything at any time. I want everyone looking sharp and on edge. And with that, we conclude Part 3, Chapter 9, The Celestial Arborium. So Carahil spells out his intentions that he saw a pending disaster. He doesn't say where the disaster is, but he intends to thwart this disaster, to subvert it. And to do that, he needs people, just mortal, everyday people, to give him his arms, to risk their lives, to put themselves in harm's way. And once they've done that, then he can step in and perform a miracle. That is his plan. And he didn't tell them where this tragedy is supposed to take place. But of course, if you remember the prologues to the book, we know exactly where it is. Well, I'm not going to say. I'm not going to say. I would hope it would be obvious where it's going to be. But who knows? Kai fully expected Davage just to name her his first officer again. But Captain Davage is, above all things, a very fair-minded individual. He appreciates Lieutenant Larson and Lieutenant Verlin, and appreciates the work they've done. And he's not going to give them any disrespect by just making Kai first officer again. He's going to play this out. Obviously, Kai has probably the inside track, because he's known her for so long. But still, he's going to honor these two and let them compete and then give them a glowing recommendation wherever they go next. And then Kai can be a pretty rough person, and until you've bounced your fist off her face a few times, she's never really going to respect you. Lieutenant Verlin makes it known that she wants the job and is going to compete hard for it, and that annoys Kai greatly. She starts insulting her to the point where Lieutenant Verlin really had no choice but to fight with her right in front of the captain. And again, being very fair-minded, Davage didn't just take her side. He says, Kai, you had that coming to you, and you know it. I'm not just going to take your side. You were in the wrong. You all but spat in her face just now. So that's just a sample of Captain Davage's character. He's a fair-minded, good person. He's not going to be blinded by friendship to Kai. He's going to treat everyone as fairly as possible. Lady Poe has a nice moment at the pig roast in the mess. As she's sitting there, she sees Peter of Ruthven, the Duke's mechanic, looking at her across the room. And Davage saw them looking at her, but didn't think anything of it. But to Poe, that was a very special moment, that he's looking at her, not seeing the bruises, the puffy face, the blackened eyes, the messed up gown. He's seeing something other than that. And to Poe, that was a very special moment. That's the thing she was seeking all this time, was to someone to see her, not to see her rank and her status and her house, but to see her as a person. And then Peter joined her for dinner, and they had a pleasant conversation. And to Poe, that's a big deal. Someone very into League society circles. A house minor is not supposed to be talking to a house major like House Blanchford. But here it was, and Poe's like, what the heck with the rules? I'm just going to enjoy sitting here having a conversation with this nice person whose attention and who helped me earlier I appreciate a lot, and I feel indebted to a little bit. So next week we continue as the Seeker barrels in on planet Xandarr, Part 3, Chapter 10, Xandarr Keep. And also, pay attention to the fact that Carahil has disappeared, and we don't know what happened to him. And Davage saw a creepy figure crawling around on the ceiling. What's that all about? We will find out. If you just think back to all the characters that have been introduced in this book, it should become crystal clear who it is. In any event, this is Ren Presents. I am your host, Ren. Peace out.